The Orpheus sector was first established as part of the Imperium in the 36th millennium. The spoils of war from the Dark Marches crusade. Its worlds have constantly been under attack from the forces of chaos and Dark Eldar raiders. It was once the site of a civil war, and reconquered by the crusading forces of the soon-to-be Saint Marduk, then an arch-confessor of the ecclesiarchy, who sacrificed himself to destroy the Chaos stronghold on the world of Kolksa, and the Ordo Malice of the Inquisition has maintained a presence in the sector ever since. So when strange nightmares and mass hysteria began to travel across the system, the forces of the Imperium believed it to be the influences of the ruinous powers. The Imperium was not prepared for what happened next. This, my friends, is the story of the Orpheus War, the third and so far final crusade of the sector. The first victims of the war were psychers and astropaths. Some were outright killed, others were left lobotomized, when a 3-century-long warp storm in the sector suddenly ceased, leaving only the small warp rift at the edge of the sector active, implying that the forces of the ruinous powers were about to make a move. Ships and entire populations of planets have gone missing in the sector before, all chalked up to the dangers of living on the edge of the Imperium. However, this time was different, for in a single night, 20 worlds' entire populations vanished. A single ship escaping to spread word of what had happened. One of the infamous black ships of the Imperium, known for bringing masses of psychers to Terra to be sacrificed to preserve the Emperor's life. The ship warned the capital planet, Amarah Prime, that danger had come to the sector, and Sector Governor Calibron Lon sent out a distress call to the forces of the Imperium, sending messenger ships through the warp to find assistance. That was when his own recurring nightmare began. In his dream, Governor Lon found himself seated at a feasting table. Dark figures staring at him, not touching the food in front of them, all save one silent figure draped in dried skin, shoveling food into an unmoving mouth, incapable of devouring the flesh in front of it. A single titanic figure seated above the feasting table on a throne, one the governor found himself incapable of looking upon. It warned him that the death of 20 worlds was just the beginning, and that in 1 year's time, all human life would be purged from the Orpheus sector, citing an unknown protocol for sending this warning. Again, the agents of the Ordo Malice insisted this was nothing but the trickery of demons. However, these nightmares generally drove Governor Lon mad, demanding that more Imperium forces be sent to fortify his homeworld of Amarah Prime, fearing the figures of his nightmares, who claimed that all worlds in this sector belonged to them, and that they were coming to take them back. A second mass communications blackout occurred in the sector. One single recurring message on all frequencies. Long-range Vox, short-range Vox, astro-telepathic communication. All of it crippled by 2 repeating words. Minarch comes. The first of the Imperium forces to fall victim to the Necron attack was the sector's resident chapter of Space Marines, the Angels Revenant. Ultramarine successors who were part of the crusade that established the sector in the first place. Their fortress monastery destroyed by their home planet's own lava, implying that the Necrons had caught them unaware, using their own homeworld against them. Following the apparent destruction of the Angels Revenant, the planet of Drusilla Major recorded a strange event. Their sun just stopped rising one day and the entire planet succumbed to nuclear winter, before a strange black metal pyramid burst from the crust of the planet, and eventually it fell silent. Then the orbital shipyards were attacked, with even the resident star fortress being overwhelmed, once again filling all communication feeds with frantic cries for help. all of which went unanswered as Governor Long cowered in his bunker, too fearful of the beings he had seen in his nightmares, only demanding greater forces to defend his world of Amarah Prime. The Minecart dynasty of the Necrons had not come to play around. They intended to purge every human from their system and were well on their way to doing so. What forces remained to resist them were all centered around Amarah Prime, the capital of the sector. The Necron fleets were capable of avoiding all the defenses around the planet, and it was only a matter of time before the Necron forces made landfall. The bulk of the defensive forces predominantly made up of the Death Corps of Krieg, a lot of people's favorite guardsman regiment for a reason. They're tough as nails and will fight to the last man. But against an enemy like the Necrons, who are equally unlikely to retreat in the face of unrelenting odds, and have no biological weaknesses like the Death Corps does, they may have met their match when it came to attrition warfare. The entirety of the Minotaurs chapter of Space Marines was present as well, as they had been hunting Eldar raiders in the region, alongside the Dark Hunters, a successor chapter of the White Scars. It's interesting how the more I cover these things, the more connected a lot of these chapters actually are. But I digress. The Necrons simply had the Imperial forces at a disadvantage, both numerically and technologically. And the sad part is, it wasn't even the entirety of the Minecart dynasty that had awakened. It was a large force, but not the entirety of their forces. In a last-ditch effort to defeat the Necrons, Chapter Master Asterion Moloch boarded their flagship and challenged their leader to single combat. He and the Necron overlord Kutlok were evenly matched. However, the fight had no conclusive winner, as a breach in the ship's hull sent the Chapter Master falling from it. And in the end, it was decided that the Imperium had lost too many resources as it is, and declared the Orpheus sector to be lost. It's not often that we get a total Xenos victory like this. I mean, they barely even scratched the Minecart dynasty. And while most of the Imperium's losses have already been made up for at this point in the timeline, it was pretty brutal. I really wish there was actually a novel that went more into detail of this war. But this entire war only exists in a volume of Imperial armor. The fact that it hasn't even been mentioned in a Necron Codex is kind of interesting, though. Although from what I hear, they really dropped the ball with 10th edition as it is. Anyway, I digress again. This was a complete victory for the Necrons, and I have to say it's really cool. It really boosts them as a threat to the greater Imperium. And the fact that they're loyal to the recently returned Silent King means we might be seeing more of the Minecart dynasty in the future. And for those of you surprised that an Ultramarine successor chapter got off-screened, don't be. A torchbearer fleet of the Indominus Crusade returned to the Orpheus sector recently. They found that the Angels Revenant were not only still alive, but still fighting the Necrons. Although less than 100 of them remained. Which, I'm not really mad about. That's still pretty cool that they had held on for that long. That's some Crimson Fist level of sheer grit and tenacity. I know it's a played out meme at this point, but it really gives life to this phrase, too angry to die. And what can I say? I'm always going to be a sucker for stuff like that. And with that said, my friends, I'd like to thank you all for watching till the end. It really helps out the channel a lot to get that retention time up. Let me know what you think about this war in the comments below. I know a lot of people get upset when the Xenos win for whatever reason, but let's face the facts here. The Imperium have barely been underdogs the entire time 40k has existed. More often than not, they're portrayed as winning every major Xenos conflict they get into. And in my opinion, it's always been one of the greater weak points of 40k compared to the old fantasy, where they legitimately lost ground every single time a Chaos incursion happened, or two Elector counts got into a petty squabble and wasted military resources. The Necrons have been established as a threat that can overpower the Imperium if left unchecked. And frankly, they sell well enough that might actually be the case both in and out of lore. And in my opinion, it's just good for the game and good for the setting. Alright, Thanks again for watching. You guys have a good one.